This is the Live to Inspire podcast with me, your host, Mo Yunus. Welcome to the Live to Inspire podcast with me, your host, Mo Yunus. Today I'm joined by Chief Executive of Acorns Children's Hospice, Toby Porter. How are you, Toby?
I'm very well, Mo, thank you, and I'm very delighted to be here with you and to see you looking so well.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for coming on. But yeah, before we jump right into, the Acorn Children's Hospice and about your career and what you do as chief executive, I'm gonna start with asking you a question that I ask all my guests. That question is, what is the biggest challenge you face in life right now?
I think the biggest challenge faced in life right now,
Hmm.
I would say that mental health of some people very dear to me.
Yeah. So, what are your ways of overcoming that?
I think trying to be positive and patient and insightful and recognizing that the COVID-19 pandemic's been tough for everyone and that there's very few families who are immune from uh, you know particular difficulties, and we have to remind ourselves that it is going to take a very long time.
Yeah, because COVID. I think something as big as that, and the way it come out of nowhere as well. It's not just affected everyone's mental health, but it's affected many places like Acorns. People rely on hospices like that, and them things got taken away. Like some people would go to Acorns for their mental health, to help their mental health, and then when that closes down, that they had nothing. So yeah, it must have been very tough for everyone. But yeah, just this is the Live to Inspire podcast, so we're here to tell everyone to just stay strong. And yeah, so that's it. So you are executive of Acorns, and because we've known each other for a while now, but I don't really know much about how this came around for you. So I'm interested to know, how did Acorns come around for you, and how did this role of being chief executive come?
It's a good question, and it was a bit of a coincidence. So my whole career, 25 years, has been spent with charity, but very different charities. And I was a specialist in what's called humanitarian aid. So I used to do humanitarian emergency operations. I worked with Oxfam in countries like South Sudan and Kosovo and Colombia and Guatemala. I worked for Save the Children. I was emergencies director globally for Save the Children, for example, when the Asian tsunami happened. So I had to mount that operation from scratch. Somewhere that would yourself, Mo, and your British Pakistani community would
Hmm.
remember would be the 2005 mega earthquake in Kashmir, which was a massive disaster. And I had to mount the response to that operation also from Save the Children to lead it. And I had this career where I used to love my work, but I was always traveling, always moving around. One week I'd be in New York, one week I'd be in Geneva, one week I'd be in Asia. And I suppose the way that I would describe it is I loved my job and I loved my personal life and my family life, but the two were hopelessly out of kilt. And I kind of, at a fundamental level, my life isn't working and that I'm not quite spending my time how I'd like to be spending my time. And I'm missing my kids growing up, and life's passing me by and everything else. And I remember, one of those tricks that you learn as a commuter. So I used to take the train up to London from Oxford, where I live.
Hmm.
And I always used to work on the train because I wake up strong, I wake up easy. So I'm always email, give me a cup of coffee and I can work at 5:30 in the morning, no worries. So I'd always work on the train. And what I realized is that the Great Western train, I used to take the train up to London. All of the people in the first class carriages got given free newspapers, like a copy of the Times.
Mhm.
And so what I'd do often is I'd walk out through first class and I'd just put a newspaper that someone else had read and discarded, and I'd put it in my rucksack. And I'll read that on the way back because I'm a morning person. In the night, when I'd take the train home in the evening, I wasn't good for anything. My brain was switching down. So I'd read a newspaper. So I'd take it in the morning and read it in the evening. And that evening, I think I'd had a really strenuous day at home, and it just said Children's Hospice Charity based in Birmingham and chief executive. And I thought, it's Birmingham. And I thought a little bit about it. And am I allowed to carry on talking? You don't mind if I'm talking?
No, of course, this is what we're here for. We want to know.
I'll tell you something, a very personal experience for me, which I don't talk about very often, but one of the most profound I suppose experiences of my life was in 1994 when I worked as part of a medical humanitarian team in the Rwanda refugee camps. So there was this country in Rwanda, there was a genocide. A lot of people were killed and a lot of other people became refugees in neighboring countries. And the medical agency that I worked for had the responsibility for doing healthcare in what was called an orphanage at the time, although you don't use the term anymore. The correct term is an unaccompanied children's centre, because we didn't know anything about the parental status. We just knew that there were unaccompanied children, very large numbers. So all these kids lived together, maybe 500 kids, in this camp, tents, wooden houses, etc. And it was the worst of times. It was like cholera, dysentery, and a lot of kids died, Mo. And in the worst of circumstances, they died without names. They died without family. This even, now we take our digital phones and what have you for granted, but we didn't have photos of some of these kids. They were just gone. And I worked with a pediatrician and neurologist at Birmingham Children's Hospital at the time, Dr. Paul, and also a couple of pediatric nurses. And they were real humanitarians. They were, and they soon put in place a protocol that when they sadly had come to the conclusion that they couldn't save a child, and that there was nothing they were going to do, that the child was basically dying. And there were, in some days there were 8 or 10 children a day dying in the worst of the disease. So they just had a little protocol where someone would always just stay and hold the child, so that the child, that there was someone, if you like, comforting the child, holding the child when he or she exited the world. Yeah. And I was one of the people who, I was one of the people who was asked to do this. So so I guess unusually for a 30-year-old, because I wasn't even, I guess I must have been 25, 26 at the time. I had been in a situation where I had been in, extreme proximity, essentially in my arms, to quite a large number of children dying. Yeah. And obviously, you can't not be profoundly changed, profoundly impacted by that. And I always, and I somehow, when I saw Acorns and how, you know, this idea about children's hospice in England, I kind of thought that this, and when I read about the charity and how professional and caring and always doing everything for the family, for the child, etc., in those situations, I must have psychologically seen a way of taking this awful part of my life and somehow finding some better closure by going to a place that literally probably the most skilled, the most professional, the most caring place in the world if a child isn't going to make it. So I kind of went on that journey a bit, and that just made me look at this. So I do feel I was kind of touched a bit by fate that day. You know, I just, some days I picked up a newspaper, other days I didn't, and I happened to pick up a newspaper that day.
That's
and nobody would ever, you know, when you're a CEO of a charity, you have what they call headhunters, people who ring you up and say, look, I know you're doing a good job at Acorns, but would you be interested in becoming a CEO for this hospice that's looking for a new chief executive? Well, nobody would have found me, because if you're looking for a CEO of a children's hospice in Birmingham, you don't tend to be looking in refugee camps, you know, in Asia and Africa and what have you. So I think it was somehow the hand of fate, if you like. And
because I mean, them times were like, most people couldn't imagine being in the situations you've been in. You know, that's it's just unimaginable for most people. But how did you maintain your strength through all that?
You know, there was what in the refugee camps.
Yeah.
Well, we were a team. We had each other. You know, we had friends. You know, so all of the usual ways. We didn't have family. You know, strange though it is for folks your age to imagine. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have video calls. We didn't have WhatsApp. We didn't have Insta. You know, so I remember there used to be a satellite, like a telex machine, that you type in basic message and it would come out and of a terminal over here, and then someone would send a fax to your family if your family had a fax machine. So we just you know, just all the same ways that everybody supports one another, just by being human and giving people the space to time out, which is of course what so many people need now, Mo, after the pandemic.
Yeah, because I mean, speaking of the pandemic, it's like I said when we started the show, you know, it's affected so many people, and I mean, even with Acorns Hospice, I mean, have you spoken to any of the families or anyone through it, and how are they, you know, keeping their strength and you know, going through this time without, you know, Acorns support?
Well, people do have Acorns support, by the way. So we've tried to double and redouble our support. But let me answer your first question. So, you know, for the benefit of your listeners who may not know, I mean, you know, the most important thing in the lives of almost every family that Acorns works with is the health of their poorly child. And as you know, Mo, yourself, from your wonderful parents, you know, the mums and dads of Acorns kids have spent years and years and years and years and years and years and years doing all they can to keep their child well. and to protect them from harm.
Mhm.
And so if you apply that to the pandemic, it's no surprise that the families of children like the children we see at Acorns were some of the very earliest and very strictest shielders,
Mhm.
because they immediately started shielding themselves and their families in order to protect. Nobody knew what this disease would do. We knew that the evidence was that it was less damaging to children, but there was no data out there as to how, as to the impact on children with very serious existing health conditions, you know. And I say that to you, Mo, not that you, I mean, you're an adult, but you understand that, you know, people didn't know. And so in practical terms, again, you know, as you know from your own experience, when you have a member of your family and a child who has significant health needs, medical needs, families depend on a network of formal and informal carers and support. So it might be an aunt or an uncle, it might be a friend popping in, it might be a care package where you have different carers coming on different times of day, different days of the week. And then the family, once they're deciding to shield, says, well, I'm cancelling everything. I'm not, I'll do the care myself. I can't have a carer coming in because I don't know if the carer is going to bring the virus from another client, another family,
Yeah.
from their social life. Can't trust anyone. I must keep my child alive. I must keep my child safe. And so what you saw was families who were very successful by and by in terms of protecting their kids, but they did it at great cost to themselves because they had to cut themselves off from the network of care and support that socially and as a country, you know, we try and make available. So this created strains. We know that we've seen higher, you know, in most cases that just led to additional fatigue, um, additional emotions, feeling of helplessness, abandonment, uncertainty, not knowing would it ever end. In isolated cases, unfortunately, we have seen an increase in incidences of safeguarding concerns in certain families, you know, higher levels of domestic violence or that kind of thing. And it's been really tough. And as you know, as you may know, the vaccines are not yet approved for children under 16. So while most of the country has started to recover because of 75% of adults having at least one vaccine, for most of the Acorns families, that's not yet an option for the family member that they're most concerned about, which is their child with health conditions, because the vaccines aren't yet approved. So it is still very difficult, Mo. I mean, I think all of us would say in life that whatever we are in life, that COVID's been a tremendous magnifier of different things in lives and in society. So COVID has magnified and increased the inequality. So richer people have tended to easily transition their lives to remote working and have just done their jobs from home, and they're the ones who've not been going out, so they haven't been spending money on nightclubs and restaurants and theatres and expensive foreign holidays. Whereas at the other end, you've got poorer people who live day by day, who might be very dependent on jobs in hospitality and other service sector that has dried up, who may not have a room in the house to work from, who might have a very poor internet connection. So COVID's been a tremendous magnifier. So, I would say that it has been very difficult for Acorns families because of the health conditions, that we are dealing with a vulnerable part of society, and COVID's been really tough, Mo.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, yeah, we do want to keep, we have spoke a lot now, and a lot of your story is it is very upsetting, what you've had to go through and stuff like that. And even with Acorns now, I mean, that you see, like with Acorns, how I've been through a lot, but now I've got these memories in my head from the fun times I had with Acorns. Even though I was sick most of the time, I still have some of these memories in my head. And I mean, is that the same with you? From not just Acorns, but what you've done in the past with the refugee stuff. And do you have any good memories, or is it all just?
No, I thank you for asking. I mean, I have many happy memories of meeting wonderful people where I worked, people I worked with. I felt very proud of the impact that the operations I was involved with were able to have on a situation. And yeah, like you with Acorns, so there are lots of happy memories. I have lots of happy memories of you at Acorns, Mo. I think you were the first person I met.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, that I think that's one thing we can inspire other people. Even though we've both got these memories and we've both been through what we've been through, we still try and keep the positive stuff in our heads. And I mean, that's really important, even for people that are suffering with mental health. As hard as it is, you've got to try and just keep going. At one stage, I didn't want to live, and sometimes I feel like that now. But I'm doing what I've always wanted to do: have my own podcast show. Speak to people like yourself, and like, I mean, the point of this show is to inspire others. And I mean, with your story and what you've been through, what I've been through, and how you're now CEO of Acorns after everything you've been through. It shows that people should never give up on life, that they should just keep going. I mean, like you said, you've been through all that, but you still have many happy memories. And I mean, that's really important to mention, because most people would think, okay, you've been through all that, your whole life's depressing. Most people would think that they wouldn't think you'd have happy memories, but you still have memories, that you can smile about from the past, which is amazing. Because one of the questions I was going to ask you was if joining Acorns affected you mentally, as in meeting the children who are sick and stuff. But now you've told me about what you've been through in the past, I'm guessing I'm guessing it hasn't at all then, because you've obviously got the strength and you've dealt with worse, haven't you?
There've been there've been incredibly sad situations that I've seen at Acorns and things that I shouldn't speak about, but
Yeah.
because the family's it's private. But obviously, but I think what I'd say, and you'd know this, Mo, is that when I was talking about applying for Acorns to work with Acorns and thinking back of that former experience where I'd seen kids dying in the Rwandan refugee camps in Zaire. I didn't know at the time. I kind of assumed that children's hospices were just full of kids who were dying. And as you know, I couldn't have been more wrong. And in fact, the the acorns every year, we reckon that we, in a normal year, take the pandemic out of it. In a normal year, we think that we provide about 7,500 bed stays.
Wow.
Across our 3 hospices. So there are 7,500 individual heads on beds, if you like, having a stay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And only about 400, 500 of those would be children at the end of their lives. And all of the others, so, the other 7,000 were from people like you having what we call a short break. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just having a lovely time. And so it took me to come to Acorns to realize that Acorns is a place where there's much more happiness than sadness. There's much more joy than there is loss or bereavement. And like if I take, remind me how old you were when you were first referred to Acorns. It was before your first birthday, wasn't it?
Yeah, 6 months, I'm sure it was. Yeah.
And I think you told me once that your pediatrician had told your parents, well, this little lad Moen, he's got this awful EB and he probably won't see his first birthday. Yeah.
They were pretty much adamant actually that I wouldn't. Yeah. So.
And here you are now, age, I'm guessing 24, 23?
24, 21, 21.
Are you 21?
Yeah.
And I know that you're only at the beginning of what your journey, your gene, what you're setting out to achieve and stuff. So so I think that's been the nicest realization for me, is that Acorns is a place where children come to live, not to die.
I mean, many people wouldn't know this actually, and I think it's worth mentioning. But Acorns played a massive part of me winning the Pride of Birmingham award and then going on to win the Pride of Britain award, because I remember I was staying at Acorns and I'm sure it was you who put me down for the, was it the Pride, was it what award was it? The the Child of Courage award, was it for, I forgot what award ceremony it was now, but I'm sure something had happened and I'd gone there to the award ceremony and they'd announced my name and I'd won that and I'd heard you'd played a massive part in that, and I think
as people say to the media, I will neither confirm nor deny that, because I think the fact is there's only one person that was responsible for you winning the Pride of Britain awards, and that was Mo and Eunice. And it doesn't really matter who may or may not have been involved in bringing your courage to the attention of that award people. But I if I did play a role, I would be very proud and happy to have done so, because I remember watching the Pride of Britain show, and it was one of the happiest days that I've had in my life, because seeing how happy you were, but also just seeing how beautifully and charismatically you handled that whole night in London, and had the whole the whole country really eating out of your hands that night, and laughing and loving the way that you were pulling Gareth Southgate's leg and striking up a rapport with Prince William and so on. And I think I think that Pride of Britain show is probably the closest thing we have to a kind of national award for inspiring others. And as you know, because I had lots of conversations with you afterwards, I always hoped that that's how you would decide to spend most of your time, would be on, giving motivational talks and looking out for other people younger than yourself now who need a lift, but also are amazing people with incredible stories to tell. And I really believe and celebrate the platform that your talents for speaking, for interaction, and your love of media, social media, podcasts. I think it's fantastic, that platform that you've created, as well as some very high profile friends. And I think they really are your friends, people like Gabby and Jack and Adil and Duncan, these are people who think the world of you, and who have, been very happy just to do their bit. But the hard work is done by you, which is, you've got a very valuable story to tell, and you're in a position where, I know what your condition means for you. I know what you have to go through every day, because you've told me, and I've, obviously I've seen some of the TV programs you've made, and I've spoken to Mohammed and Shafia and so on about it. But and you're an inspiration, and that is a great platform. And if charities like Acorns can do a little bit about raising the profile of some incredible children and young people like yourself, that's what we're here for, and that's why people are kind enough to support us.
Yeah, I mean, vice versa. Like me having, as soon as we started this podcast, one of my aims was to get you on and to make sure we could raise as much awareness for acorns as possible. Because I mean, I still feel like it should be out there a bit more. I still feel like not many people still know about it, because even when I go out now, people ask me what acorns is about, and what what is it, and I mean, I'm hoping this podcast does very well. I'm hoping to have Prince William on my 50th episode. So I'm hoping this podcast does very well. So if it does do very well, and we do get a lot of listeners and viewers, it will be easier for them to listen to this and find out themselves what acorns is about. Because I mean, we go back, I think, a year ago, and one of the hospices was in danger of shutting down, wasn't it?
In Walsall, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, how much money did you have to raise for that again?
So we set ourselves the target of raising £2 million, and in the Black Country, and the Black Country community were fantastic. They really took the appeal to their hearts, and everybody was fundraising for Acorns. Buckets were going around pubs and restaurants, the churches, the mosques, the schools. Everybody was doing bits and pieces, and then, of course, COVID happened, and all of that stuff stopped.
Yeah.
But actually, COVID has provided such a shock to everybody's, if you like, what we could call business model. So all of the ways we used to make money, some of them have increased, some of them have decreased, some of them have changed, and also the way that we've spent money has changed as well. And so the overall result is we're fine, and the Walsall Hospice is saved, and Acorns is here to stay in Birmingham, Walsall and Worcester, and that's great, and that's it's been a wonderful team effort. But above all, we've just felt the love and the support of the local community. People are very kind, as you know. I've seen you also inspire people to give money to support causes that you care about, Acorns and so on.
So what I'm interested to know what, because as soon as you become 18 and you leave a hospice like Acorns, it does put a huge hole in your life. Because remember, we spoke about it, and I told you how I think it would affect me leaving the hospice and not, and I mean, I still feel like that there isn't much out there for adults as much there are for children, and I'm hoping in the future that does change. Because there, I don't think it's right if people are 18 and then as soon as they're 18 they're having to leave what they've grown up with, and then they've got nothing else to turn to. Because I've had nothing else to turn to. I've had to fight depression on my own. I've had to come from wanting to end my life to you know, I've had to fight that all alone without the help of anyone. And I mean, I was strong and I believe in God and I believe God helped me. But some people, unfortunately, they wouldn't be as strong as me if they were in that position. So I really hope in the future that that changes and there is more out there for adults, you know, more adult services out there. Um, but yeah, acorns.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is very difficult, Mo, but if we really sort of, you understand, I mean, you know this, that most children that Acorn sees are referred to us between birth and say 5 years old.
Yeah.
Um, and we wouldn't be able to take on new children if folks like you stayed with us into adulthood. And so
Yeah.
the issue, it does need to change. I mean, the process you describe is unsatisfactory and really unjust because, you know, it must have felt very arbitrary for you. One day you're 17 years and 364 days and you've got all access to services and places like Acorns, and 2 days later you haven't. And what's really changed? Well, yeah, you had an 18th birthday. Well, wow.
Yeah.
But I think the change that needs to happen isn't the children's hospices opening their doors to young adults. The change that needs to happen is for services to open to young adults that aren't currently
Yeah, no,
properly.
that's exactly what I mean. I mean, there should be something to turn to once someone leaves Acorns. You know, okay, Acorns, like you said, it's a lot of kids from a young age that they only are there for a young age and stuff. But as soon as a child does hit 18 and they have left the hospice, they should have something else to turn to as an adult. You know, an adult should have something to turn to. And
But I don't think it should be a hospice. I mean, I think St Mary's, for example, the adult hospital in Birmingham there, near us in Celio.
Mhm.
It's a great hospice. And what they do brilliantly. But I'd hate the thought of you there, Mo, you know, because it's not full of people having short breaks. It's full of people at the very end of their lives. Yeah. And
Yeah,
as you know, that's the difference between the adult hospice and the children's hospice.
yeah,
So
yeah,
what I think we need is to have proper transition and set youth and young adult services for people like you, and and
hmm
and services that are responsive to your needs as they are today, not a child's, not a fully independent or healthy adult, but something that, you know, something appropriate to what you want, but also to the opportunities as well as the constraints caused by disabilities of different sorts. Yeah.
yeah. Because I mean, yeah, that is
Did you ever go to that place in Tipton? What was it called?
no, no. I've tried a few places, but I mean the waiting list for a lot of them were very very big. So it was like a very slight chance that you'd actually get in. But I mean, if we do go back to Acorns and we go back to your role as CEO, and I mean, it it does sound like a big role to take on. I mean, do you have to plan for the future, and do you have any plans for Acorns in the future,
Oh,
and what are they?
yeah, I mean, I learn all the time as CEO. So obviously, as I'm responsible for the fundraising, I'm responsible most importantly for the care work. I'm responsible for us filing our income tax. I'm responsible for the 300 or so employees, the 1,000 or so volunteers, the customers in our shops. It's a very broad job, the CEO role. And luckily, I work with a great team. And luckily, as you know, Acorns, people are really kind to Acorns. There's a lot of goodwill towards us in the community.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of people in the UK, I do think that the UK has got the best charity sector in the world, and that's because the public are the most generous public in the world with the greatest tradition of dipping their hand in their pockets and supporting their local charities. So I learn every day. I mean, I'm not the same person that met you that first time when I went to the Birmingham hospice for the first time, and you were staying there, and you came up to me and said, "Oh, you're the new chief executive," and so on. And I've changed since then. I hope I've learned a lot. It's been a difficult 4 or 5 years. We've had financial challenges as a charity, as you referenced 10 minutes ago. And then just as we were emerging from that, the pandemic came along, which is really once in a lifetime challenge for anyone running a charity or an organization, in addition to the challenges it presents in our own lives. I mean, the weird thing about this pandemic, wherever you are, you have to work in an organization where you know that every single one of your colleagues has not only experiencing new challenges in their professional lives, but they're also dealing with all of the personal issues caused by COVID. Concern about friends, in many cases, bereavement, 130,000 deaths in the UK, not being able to see friends, not being able to see families, not being able to go shopping, not being able to have proper holidays. It's really, really hard because you're dealing with a workforce that is really, really tired. And now we all have to find the right way of, we know there's tons of people who want to stay in Acorns again now. They're feeling a bit more confident about the future. I desperately need a stay. Like I said, many of them haven't had a stay for 15 months. But obviously I'm balancing that. My own team are tired and saying, well, we need a break and this or that. So you have to find that middle way. Did your carers come around during COVID, Mo?
No. They refused to come. They refused to come. But I mean, the amazing thing now is, we all did go for a lot. I didn't have carers for a few months. And I think everyone went through a lot in their own way. But the amazing thing now is we're slowly getting back to normality. Things are opening. I went to a football match. I went to watch the mighty Villa last week, beat Chelsea. And I know how much you love the Villa. So
I'm not sure you believe me, but I do actually love the Villa. They're just not my favourite team, but they're my second favourite team ever since I've worked with Acorns.
I find that hard to believe, but yeah. I mean, yeah. You okay? So
because I work for a charity, so I'm not one of those football fans. So your listeners, you know this, but for your benefit of your listeners, I've been a Leeds United supporter my whole life, and actually, I was quite upset. Mo, you'll have seen there was a lot of beef between Gabby and the Leeds fans based on.
I think to be fair to Gabby, he was only trying to have a laugh with them, and I think
he was only having a laugh. And actually, the way I view it,
very serious. I mean, even Bamford come out and he took it serious himself. So I mean, Gabby, he won't stop, and he won't stop. He loves winding people up, and I mean, he was in his element at that time. He was loving it.
Well, the thing is that the way I see it is you've got Leeds and Villa, who for years and years and years, their fans have been let down by what's happened to the football clubs. These are both huge clubs at the heart of huge cities in the UK, and I actually think I love this season. I love it that you see Leeds and Villa comfortable mid-table, playing with some fantastic victories. I mean, your victory against Liverpool was still the result of the season.
Did a double on Arsenal, beat Chelsea, beat Spurs. I think the good thing to mention as well, and the amazing thing to mention is we've got the Euros coming up now with England, and we've got Leeds have a player in there. Villa have 2 players in there. Watkins should be in there too, by the way. But Gary Southgate picked Dominic Calvert-Lewin, even though Watkins got 5 more assists than him. So that doesn't make sense at all. But yeah, the Euros.
If we were being strict, Mo, Watkins should be a Leeds player because that's where everyone thought he was, and that's where everyone said he wanted to go after Brentford didn't get promotion and Leeds did a year ago. But I think Leeds decided to sign Rodrigo, a Spanish forward, and that left Watkins free to go to Villa. And I think you made the better signing.
I think Watkins would have always come to Villa because of Dean Smith. I think that's always happened. Dean Smith has always been like a father figure to him. So I mean, I think that would have always happened anyway. A bit of persuasion from Dean Smith, and he would have been there. But yeah, the Euros are coming up. How do you think England would do before we start to finish this episode?
I think it's always the right time to be optimistic. I've been following England in tournaments for much longer than you've been on this earth. So I've got 34 years of. I've cheered on it in the Euro 90s. I was, Italia 90. I can remember watching that in Spain, in Glenn Hoddle's Euros. That was 96 when Paul Gascoigne got that goal against Scotland, and we did that brilliant Euros against the Dutch. We all thought we were going to win that tournament, and then there was disappointment. So let's see what happens.
Tournament, though, do you think? Yeah, where do you think we'll come? Who do you think is going to win the tournament, and where do you think England will come?
Well, I guess the only way I can answer that is to say I think England will get to at least the semi-finals, and why don't I predict that England wins? Yeah.
Yeah, I think England will get far, but Portugal and France look very, very strong at the minute. I mean, Gary Southgate, he's picked 4 right backs, hasn't he, as well? So it's going to be tough. I mean, with the squad selection, if you pick a better squad and the right players, I think we could have won. But yeah, I'm not the manager, so I can't really talk. But yeah, thanks very much for coming on the Live to Inspire podcast. It's been an honor to speak to you. And before we do close, I've got to ask my closing question now. And that question is, before we go, what would be your message of inspiration to someone who's listening to this and they're feeling, a bit down at the minute?
I would try and be sympathetic and to lend an ear, but I would say that you've always got to keep going, and that's where you've been such an inspiration, Mo, is that what you've demonstrated is that however difficult your circumstances, you've got to look forward, not backwards, and you've got to look outwards and not inwards. And but I would be very sympathetic because life has been incredibly tough in the last 18 months. All of us have been tested in ways that we have never been tested before, and certainly not all at the same time. And therefore there are no set answers. There's no set scripts. We are the generation that has got to come out together from this pandemic and be part of building, if you like, a post-pandemic UK, a post-pandemic West Midlands, Birmingham, that we're all proud to live in, and that treats people fairly and respectfully, and yeah. That would be my message, man.
That's an amazing message. So to anyone that's feeling down at the minute, I think that could really boost someone. And where can the listeners, the viewers, where can they find you, and where can they find the Acorns Children's Hospice?
So if you Google Acorns Children's Hospice, you'll find us. And there'll be the website, or at Acorns Hospice, our Twitter and Instagram. We're Acorns on Facebook, and they'll probably find a picture of you there, Mo, because you're still our best known ambassador, and we'll always be very proud to have created some happiness for you and for your lovely parents. And myself and the team at Celio, we still remember you. The gnomes are still there with their telephones and all of the rooms that you used to enjoy. We haven't got a PS5 though, because I know you have.
I went the other day for the ambassador stuff, and yeah, it hit my heart going back there and seeing a few of the old staff that I grew up with, and I mean, I will never stop fighting for acorns and fighting for, I just want acorns to get out there, and I want everyone in this country to know about acorns. That's my plan. So yeah, I won't stop. And yeah, until I've left the world, I won't stop doing that. But yeah, thank you very much for coming
Thank
on
you.
today. It's
Been
no,
lovely to
it's
talk to you again.
yeah. Thanks for your time. And yeah, guys, this has been the Live to Inspire podcast with me, your host Mo Eunice, and take care, everyone. Goodbye. Thanks for joining us on the Live to Inspire podcast with me, your host Mo Eunice. Please comment, like, and share to help build our global community.